At first glance, they all seem to be the same people. But look closer. The forests shaped one way of life. The open plains shaped another. The deserts demanded different solutions, and the oceans offered different opportunities. One continent, one shared origin. Yet the first cultures of America were already beginning to follow very different paths. Before we continue our journey through the history of America, we must first travel much farther back in time. Long before the first villages, long before the first cultures, and long before anyone ever set foot in the Americas, our story began somewhere else. It began in Africa. Modern humans, our own species, Homo sapiens, first appeared there around 300,000 years ago. But the story of humanity reaches even deeper into the past. For millions of years, other human ancestors had already lived across Africa. They walked its valleys, crossed its rivers, adapted to changing climates, and slowly evolved over countless generations. Eventually, one branch of that long human family became us. Then, around 70,000 years ago, small groups of modern humans began leaving Africa. Some traveled north through the Nile Valley and into the lands of the eastern Mediterranean. Others crossed the narrow waters of what we now call the Bab al-Mandab Strait, entering the Arabian Peninsula. At that time, the world looked very different. The last ice age had locked enormous amounts of water inside vast continental ice sheets. As a result, sea levels were about 120 meters lower than they are today. Many coastlines stretched much farther into the sea. Some islands were connected to larger land masses, while others lay much closer together than they do today. These changing landscapes created new opportunities for people to move, to explore, and to survive. Generation after generation, families continued their journey, not because they were searching for new continents, but because they were following rivers, animals, changing seasons, and the promise of a better life. And with every new generation, their world became a little larger. Over thousands of years, their descendants spread across Arabia, Mesopotamia, India, Southeast Asia, China, and eventually the frozen lands of northeastern Siberia. Then, during the last ice age, another extraordinary landscape emerged. A vast land bridge, known today as Beringia, connected northeastern Asia with North America. For countless generations, people crossed this immense plain. They did not know they were entering a new continent. To them, it was simply another land filled with rivers, grasslands, animals, and endless opportunities to survive. Today, many researchers also believe that some groups continued moving along the Pacific coastline. Lower sea levels exposed much broader coastal landscapes than we see today. Some shorelines extended for many more kilometers, and islands that are now separated by deep water lay much closer together. These changing coastlines may have made gradual coastal travel easier than it appears today. Much of that ancient world, however, now lies beneath the ocean. As sea levels rose at the end of the Ice Age, those coastlines disappeared, taking with them many traces of the earliest human journeys. By about 7000 BCE, those migrations, which had begun tens of thousands of years earlier, had transformed a once empty continent into a homeland shared by many different communities. Separated by mountains, rivers, forests, grasslands, and deserts, each community gradually developed its own knowledge, its own traditions, and its own way of life. The story of America was no longer about arrival. It was now becoming the story of cultures, and that is where our journey continues. By about 7000 BCE, North America contained environments that demanded very different skills. Northern rivers offered seasonal fish. The plains supported large grazing animals. Eastern forests provided deer, nuts, and wild plants. In the dry Southwest, people depended on smaller game, seeds, roots, and reliable springs. Different resources created different tools, movements, and traditions. When people hear the word culture, they often think of language, art, or traditions. But those came later. The first difference began with something much simpler: the land itself. People did not choose completely different ways of life. The forests chose for them. The rivers chose for them. The plains and the deserts made different choices necessary. Over many generations, those different ways of surviving slowly became different cultures. Let's look at the evidence. Our first evidence comes from the eastern woodlands. Here, dense forests made large herd hunting almost impossible. Instead, people relied on deer, wild plants, nuts, and seasonal berries. Archaeological evidence shows that daily life adapted to the forest itself. The environment was already shaping a culture unlike any other. Far to the west, the Great Plains told a very different story. Here, survival depended on the great bison herds. Unlike the forests, success required teamwork, careful planning, and coordinated hunts. Archaeological evidence shows that these communities developed tools and hunting strategies perfectly suited to the open grasslands, creating a way of life unique to the plains. Along great rivers and the Pacific coast, water became the foundation of life. Seasonal salmon runs provided an abundant and dependable source of food. Archaeological discoveries include fish traps, bone fishing tools, and dugout canoes, showing that these communities developed skills very different from those of the forests or the open plains. Far to the southwest, the land offered a different challenge. Water was scarce, and survival depended on knowing where every reliable spring could be found. People gathered desert plants, collected seeds, and hunted smaller animals. Archaeological evidence shows that life here was shaped by careful adaptation, proving once again that the environment guided the birth of different cultures. In the mountains, survival meant adapting to a world of changing seasons and rugged terrain. Communities followed the resources, moving between valleys and higher elevations as conditions changed. Archaeological evidence suggests seasonal camps, specialized hunting, and the careful use of mountain plants, creating yet another distinct way of life across North America. The evidence is unmistakable. Long before writing, or cities, or kingdoms, North America's landscapes had already begun shaping different ways of life. The forest, the plains, the rivers, the deserts, and the mountains each demanded different knowledge, and from those different environments, the first cultures slowly began to emerge. Food became another force that shaped different cultures. In the eastern woodlands, people relied on the forest itself. Acorns, walnuts, berries, edible roots, and wild plants provided food throughout much of the year. Archaeological evidence, including plant remains, grinding stones, and food processing tools, shows that forest communities developed diets unlike those found anywhere else in North America. On the Great Plains, food told a different story. Bison became the foundation of daily life. Archaeological evidence shows that meat was dried for future use, while hides, bones, and sinew were carefully preserved. One animal provided food, clothing, tools, and shelter, making the plains unlike any other region in North America. Along the river and the Pacific coast, food arrived with the seasons. The annual salmon runs provided an abundant source of nourishment that could be preserved for months. Archaeological evidence includes fish weirs, bone fishing tools, and drying sites, showing that these communities built their way of life around the rhythm of the rivers. In the dry Southwest, food required patience, observation, and generations of knowledge. Communities harvested prickly pear, agave, wild seeds, and edible roots, making careful use of every reliable resource. Archaeological evidence includes grinding stones, digging tools, and preserved plant remains, revealing a diet shaped not by abundance, but by deep understanding of the desert landscape. Food in the mountains depended on the changing seasons. Communities moved between valleys and higher elevations, following the resources as they became available. They gathered berries, pine nuts, and edible alpine plants, while hunting mountain sheep and deer. Archaeological evidence from seasonal camps, animal bones, and plant remains reveals a way of life shaped by the rhythm of the highlands. The evidence is now unmistakable. Food was never the same across North America. Forests offered nuts, berries, and deer. The plains depended upon bison. Rivers brought seasonal salmon. The desert demanded expert knowledge of native plants, while the mountains followed the rhythm of the seasons. Archaeological evidence shows that different environments produced different diets, and those different diets helped shape the first cultural differences across the continent. Tools also began to follow the environment. In the eastern woodlands, dense forests provided hardwood for making strong handles, digging sticks, bows, and canoes. Polished stone axes became essential for cutting trees and shaping wood. Archaeological discoveries of ground stone axes, woodworking tools, and preserved wooden artifacts show how the forests shaped both technology and daily life. On the Great Plains, tools evolved differently. Life depended on following vast herds across open grasslands. Lightweight spears, atlatls, and finely crafted stone projectile points became essential for successful bison hunts. Archaeological discoveries of hunting camps, stone points, and butchering sites show how the plains shaped a hunting technology built for mobility. Along the rivers and Pacific coast, tools reflected a different way of life. People carved dugout canoes from massive tree trunks, crafted fishing spears, bone fish hooks, woven nets, and wooden paddles. Archaeological discoveries of fish hooks, net weights, woodworking tools, and ancient canoes reveal technologies designed for life on the water. In the arid Southwest, every tool had to conserve resources. People crafted digging sticks, stone hoes, grinding stones, and woven carrying baskets designed for gathering, processing, and preserving desert foods. Archaeological discoveries of manos, metates, stone tools, and woven basket impressions show how technology adapted to a land where every drop of water mattered. In the mountains and high plateaus, tools balanced strength and portability. People crafted durable stone axes, scrapers, knives, and strong wooden spears suited for rugged terrain. Archaeological discoveries of quarry sites, stone workshops, and worn hunting tools show that mountain communities adapted their technology to life at higher elevations. The evidence is unmistakable. Tools were never identical across North America. Forests produced woodworking axes. The plains favored lightweight hunting weapons. Rivers inspired canoes, nets, and fishhooks. The desert perfected grinding stones and digging tools, while the mountains demanded strong, portable equipment. Archaeology reveals that each landscape shaped its own technology, and those different tools became another foundation of North America's first cultural differences. Homes also began to reflect the land. In the eastern woodlands, abundant timber allowed people to build sturdy wooden lodges, covered with bark or woven mats. Archaeological discoveries of post holes, hearths, and village layouts reveal permanent structures designed for forest life rather than constant movement. On the Great Plains, homes reflected a life of movement. People built lightweight shelters using wooden poles covered with animal hides, strong enough to protect their families, yet easy to dismantle and carry. Archaeological evidence from temporary camps, hearths, and scattered post remains reveals homes designed to follow the migrating bison. Along the rivers and Pacific coast, homes followed the water. People built wooden houses using massive cedar logs, planks, and woven plant materials. Archaeological discoveries of post holes, hearths, woodworking tools, and ancient village sites show settlements designed for communities that depended on rivers and the sea. In the arid southwest, homes became smaller, thicker, and carefully placed. People built shelters using wooden frames, brush, reeds, and earth, often close to dependable springs. Archaeological discoveries of hearths, post holes, and preserved dwelling sites show homes designed to conserve shade and make the most of scarce water. In the mountains and high plateaus, homes offered protection from cold, wind, and changing seasons. People built shelters using timber, stone, and thick layers of natural insulation. Archaeological discoveries of stone foundations, hearths, and mountain camps reveal homes designed to endure life at higher elevations. The evidence is unmistakable. Homes were never identical across North America. Forests favored strong wooden lodges. The plains required lightweight shelters that could move with the herds. Rivers supported large timber homes. The desert demanded compact shelters near precious water, while the mountains inspired well-insulated homes built for harsh seasons. Archaeology reveals that every landscape shaped the places people called home. Clothing also changed from one region to another. In the eastern woodlands, people wore garments made from deer hides, woven plant fibers, and natural bark materials. Archaeological discoveries of bone needles, hide scrapers, and fiber-working tools show that clothing was shaped by the resources of the forest. Across the Great Plains, clothing became part of survival. Bison hides provided warmth, strength, and remarkable durability. People carefully treated their garments to withstand wind, rain, and constant travel. Archaeological discoveries of hide-working tools, bone needles, and awls reveal clothing built for life on the open grasslands. In the Pacific Northwest, clothing reflected a world of forests, rivers, and rain. People crafted garments from carefully prepared hides, woven plant fibers, and strips of cedar bark. Archaeological discoveries of weaving tools, bone needles, and fiber-working implements show clothing adapted to life beside the rivers and the sea. In the arid Southwest, clothing adapted to heat, sun, and scarce resources. People relied on light animal hides, woven plant fibers, yucca, and other desert plants. Archaeological discoveries of sandals, cordage, and woven fibers reveal clothing designed for movement through a hot, dry landscape. In the mountains, clothing answered a different challenge. Cold, wind, and sudden changes in weather. People relied on thick animal hides, fur, and layered garments for protection. Archaeological discoveries of hide-working tools, bone needles, and mountain camps show clothing adapted for survival at higher elevations. Across North America, clothing tells the same larger story. Forest hides, prairie bison skins, cedar fibers, desert yucca, and mountain furs were not random choices. Each came from the world nearby. Different environments provided different materials, and people transformed them into different solutions. Another layer of cultural diversity was taking shape. Another clue comes from burial practices. Across different regions, communities treated their dead in different ways. Some were buried with carefully placed objects, while others followed different traditions. These differences suggest that beliefs, customs, and social traditions were also beginning to develop along distinct regional paths. Together, these differences reveal something important. By around 7000 BCE, North America was not a single cultural world. Communities were adapting in different ways to different landscapes. Their food, tools, homes, clothing, and traditions were becoming increasingly distinct. The foundations of regional cultures were already taking shape. So what does all of this evidence actually tell us? By around 7000 BCE, North America was already becoming a world of remarkable regional diversity. But we must be careful with that statement. We are not looking at clearly defined nations or cultures with fixed borders and names. What archaeology reveals is something more gradual. Different environments offered different opportunities and imposed different challenges. Forests, open grasslands, rivers and coasts, dry deserts and high mountains, each provided different resources, and communities responded in different ways. Their food, their tools, and their homes began reflecting the landscapes in which they lived. Environment did not create culture by itself, but it helped shape the choices available to people. The same pattern appears in clothing. In the forests, prepared hides and plant fibers were readily available. Across the plains, bison hides offered warmth and durability. In the Pacific Northwest, people could work with hides, plant fibers, and cedar bark. In the Southwest, yucca, a tough desert plant, provided strong fibers that could be turned into cordage, sandals, and other useful materials. And in colder mountain environments, thicker hides and fur offered protection from wind and changing temperatures. But there is an important warning here. We should not project the clothing, houses, decorations, or ceremonial traditions of much later Native American cultures back into 7000 BCE. Archaeology gives us evidence, but reconstruction must stop where that evidence ends. Burial practices offer another clue, but here too we must be careful. Around 7000 BCE, the evidence is still too limited to reconstruct clear regional differences in burial customs with confidence. Archaeology can show us that the dead were sometimes treated deliberately, but it cannot always tell us what those practices meant or what people believed. And that may be the most important lesson of all. Archaeologists reconstruct this distant world from fragments, stone tools, animal remains, traces of shelters, plant fibers, and burial sites. No single clue proves that distinct regional cultures existed. But when many clues point in the same direction, a larger pattern begins to emerge. By around 7000 BCE, people across North America were adapting differently, living differently, and gradually developing traditions shaped by their own regions. These were not fixed cultures with clear borders or names, but the beginnings of an increasingly diverse cultural world. By 7000 BCE, North America had changed profoundly. The first communities had become rooted in their landscapes, and across forests, plains, coasts, deserts, and mountains, different ways of life were taking shape. But this story was only beginning. In the centuries ahead, these regional traditions would grow, change, and become increasingly complex. The continent was entering a new chapter of its human story.